On a December day in 1963, three teenage friends went sled riding, and what they thought would be just another fun day in the snow took a sudden and nearly tragic turn. Richard Dunston of Columbus, Ohio, Bill Leighty of Belhaven, North Carolina, and Ron Goron from Connellsville, Pennsylvania were Boy Scouts at the time. Bill, who was critically injured while sled riding, was saved by Richard and Ron. Now, for the first time in nearly as many years, they're back together to share their story. Well, welcome, Richard, Ron, and Bill. It is so wonderful to have you with us today. Richard, let's start with you. Tell us what happened on that December day in 1963.
Well, if memory serves me correctly, and I know Bill and Ron will correct me sometime if I'm missing it, but we had all decided to go to Bill's dairy farm. Bill's mom and dad had a beautiful farm in, what was it, Vanderbilt or Dawson? Bill?
It's Trotter. It's on Duck Pond Road.
Okay. And we went there to go sled riding, and we were all in scouts together at the time and all in the same patrol, the Fox Patrol with Troop 101. And we knew each other very well. We'd been together for years and in school together. And so anyhow, we all went out to Bill's farm and got our sleds, and we were doing some nice sled riding. And Bill was always a little more adventurous than the rest of us. And of course, he knew the farm. And he gets a little close to the edge of what we thought was just a snowdrift. And he got a little closer and a little closer. And all of a sudden, Ron and I looked up, and there was no Bill anymore. We couldn't figure out where he went. We didn't see him pulling his sled out of the way, and we didn't see him leaving us, but we kind of walked over to this little drift, and it turned out to be kind of a big drift. Yep. And he ended up going right off the top of it. And when we saw him down there, it looked to us like he had landed on his head and he was starting to turn blue. And since that was not his normal color, we figured there must be something wrong. So we made our way down there and through the snow, which was kind of heavy. And by the way, every time I tell this story, it gets to be deeper snow. But anyhow, so we made our way down.
Yeah, I used to walk to school and got a mile every time.
Yeah, it was uphill both ways, right, Bill?
Uphill both ways. That's right.
And you carried your relatives on your back. Yeah. So anyhow, we got down to where Bill was, and it was pretty serious. He had started to turn blue, and we couldn't see any breathing. But, all three of us had been in scouts and in first aid training, and that training kind of kicked in. And the idea was that you send somebody for help right away and treat for shock. And if the person's not breathing, you start artificial respiration. I mean, this was all first aid 101 stuff.
Be prepared.
Be prepared.
That's right. Scout motto.
As Ron said to me as recently as last month, we just did our job. And we decided, I started the artificial respiration, and Ron went to get the Leighty families to get the doctors, and yes. Then the family was able to get Dr. Bill Colvin, and of course in those days doctors would come to you, and he came out, and Ron led him over to where Bill and I were, and he took over from there, and then they transported.
Albert was there.
Who was?
His dad, Bill's
dad.
Yeah,
his dad was there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I went and got my dad. Yeah.
Yeah, what happened when I ran to get him, I couldn't find him, and I kept yelling, "Hey, Albert, where you at? Bill's hurt. Bill's hurt." And I'm yelling at Albert for Albert. Well, then I just yelled, "Hey, I'm taking your truck." I don't know if he heard me or not.
Well, that would have got him.
And remind us too, you were all how old? What were your ages?
15.
You were 15. So Dad, Mr. Leighty, I'm taking your truck. If you can hear me, I'm still in your truck.
Yeah. So I stole Albert's truck, and he heard me driving out the driveway, and he took off and left the barn and then headed for where Rich and Bill was at. And I ran out and I almost gave his mother a heart attack.
Yeah.
I ran in the house. Virginia, Bill's hurt. Call an ambulance. And she started panicking because I was a little bit panicky anyway.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well,
So
she
you,
had asthma real bad, and it kicked off.
yeah. So from the scene with Bill to the house to the farm, that, like, how far was that? You were running there, and then you had to drive.
Where I was laying to the barn, probably about maybe a quarter of a mile, and then to the house, maybe a little bit less.
Wow, that's a long way to go.
Oh yeah,
especially in the
way to
snow.
go get help. Yeah.
How much snow was out? How much snow did you say was out there that day in
On
reality?
the ground, none. It all blew into the drifts.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
But the drifts were 30 feet high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Well, not that high, but
About 10.
Yeah, probably about 10 foot. I went over and hit, and right below that drift was no snow. It was just a solid hard ground.
Yeah.
So I went face planted right down in that hard frozen ground.
Wow. Bill, when you were going over, like, were you like, do you remember that part where you're heading over?
I said, oh Lord, here we go.
Wow. You didn't know what to expect. Oh my
That
God.
was it. And that's all I remember.
Well, Mary, we had no, like most accidents, and stuff like this happens in life. It's the farthest thing from your mind. You're just out there having a great time. You're just sled riding. And then all of a sudden it gets real quick.
Real quick.
Now, didn't you mention that in Boy Scouts about every other week they would test you on your life-saving skills, right?
They had constant training, and we would go to, you guys probably remember this, we used to go to camporees and stuff like that where they would have first aid competitions. And the way they taught us in our patrols and in our scout training was you would maybe have 6 guys in your patrol, maybe more. But you would divide up the responsibilities so that each person became a specialist. Like somebody became a specialist in broken bones, somebody else became a specialist in shock treatment, somebody else became a specialist in sprains or burns or stuff like this. And that way, when you were presented, it was actually handed to you on a piece of paper. Here's your problem. And then you have to get together as a team, work it out. Okay, Tommy Holt, you do this. Jimmy Hahn, you do that. Bill, you're going to do this. Ron, this is your specialty. And everybody just attacks the patient and takes care of the problem right then and there. But there were only there's Bill, Ron, and I there, and Bill was not being cooperative.
That wouldn't be my part, they said.
Yeah, I couldn't assign him anything.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Let's talk about the help arriving. How long? So you had to get there. How long did it take you to get to the phone to say we need help for his mom to call?
Well, it took me probably 10 minutes.
10 minutes there. And then you called the ambulance, and as Richard said,
his mother called the ambulance.
His mother called the ambulance. And as Richard mentioned, Dr. Colvin, in those days, the ambulance stopped at the doctor's place and picked the doctor up. So how long until medical help arrived for Bill?
About a half hour, I'd say.
That's a long time. And Richard, all the while, you're giving him.
He was doing a good job at that.
I'll say.
No, it wouldn't have meant anything without Ron going. I mean, I could have done that for half an hour and Bill would have passed away. But, Ron was able to get a hold of the people that could really help, the medical professionals.
Yes.
And I would have run out of steam pretty soon because Bill was, once I started artificial respiration, his color started to come back a little bit, but it didn't come back. It didn't come back to the extent that Dr. Colvin walked in and said, "What's wrong with him?" No, nothing like that. Right. He was still a kind of a shade of blue when the doctor got there.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So, Bill, at what part do you remember anything?
I remember being loaded into the ambulance. That's the only thing I remember. Okay. And then waking up in the hospital sometime that evening. That's the only thing I remember. And my mother's standing there crying.
I am sure. Did you break any bones? Did you have any injuries?
Head was too hard. It didn't even put a bruise on me. No, just stopped the heart. That's all, and it came back. Thanks to those guys and the good Lord.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. How long were you in the hospital?
I think overnight and got out that afternoon.
Oh, that's amazing. That
Yeah.
is amazing considering what happened. My
Yeah.
goodness. And that you were blue. Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh my gosh. So Richard, not long after this happened, then you received a Boy Scouts certificate of merit for your role.
Yeah,
And
this was quite unexpected, and
yeah.
I had no idea this was going to happen. And by the way, Bill, I don't know if you ever saw this. Do you remember this?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Sure
There's
do.
me.
Describe what we're looking at.
This is the Daily Courier.
Okay.
And the handsome fella in there is me. The other guy's Bill, sitting down there. And this is taken in the backyard of my home on Ridge Boulevard. I was quite surprised. The Daily Courier reporter came out and said, we want to get you guys together because, Rich, you're going to get this award for saving Bill's life. And that's when this 60-year ordeal started. I didn't know I was going to get the award. I got the award presented to me in church and in front of my family and the scout people, and well, basically the congregation. I, at the time, was an Evangelical United Brethren there in Connellsville. Our church was on Lincoln Avenue. So they presented it to me in the church, I think in May or June of the following year. And it never occurred to me at the time, I'm sorry to say, it never occurred to me at the time that Ron wasn't getting the same award in his church. It never occurred to me at all. But it became apparent later that he hadn't gotten an award. And this was on my soul for 60 years. And I wish Ron would have been more of an ass about it, but he never said a word to me.
That's
He never.
My award was that my
That's
best
him.
friend was one of my best friends was alive. That
Yep.
was my award.
There you
Well,
go.
I appreciate that, and mine too. But
I told them you needed the award because you gave mouth to mouth.
well, but, you know, Ron, I saw you at a couple class reunions, and Bill, I may have seen you at one or two. I'm not sure, but it would have been wonderful for me if you would have come up to me and said, "You dirty so and so, you got that award, and I didn't get any award." And then I could have been defensive about it. You know, I said, "What are you talking about? I'm the one that gave him artificial respiration." No, none of that happened.
I'm one of the instigators of you getting that award.
You
I
are.
went to the I went to the Boy Scout troop, Mr. Whitnam, and I told them that you deserved an award. And I told them I panicked
Oh
at the
my
beginning, and I
God.
let you take charge. But
Well,
what
Bill,
happened? I did panic a little bit. I go, Richard, what are we going to do? And
this makes me feel even worse.
No, what happened was that saved my life, helping Bill out, because I knew I didn't panic whenever I had to jump out of a second-story window in the house that was on fire, or I had to wear an EAB and run out of air by the time I got back to the engine room of the submarine I was on.
So it was just amazing, because I had thought all this time. Thank you, Ron, for what you did there. I had no idea that you had gone and said anything to Mr. Witt. But anyhow, I got this award, and it was a big deal at the time. And years and years went by, and I saw you at class reunions, and you were always a gentleman and never said a word, and everything was wonderful. And it just weighed heavier and heavier on my heart that whatever I could do about it, I wanted to try to do something. And
I appreciate what you did, Rich.
Well,
but
just
knowing
Ron,
you guys and being with you friends has been my reward all along.
Well, then you can reimburse me the $200 for the frame if you feel that way about it.
I'm sorry, I don't have $200.
Oh, okay.
I'm on welfare.
I hear you.
Checks in the mail.
Checks in the mail, right, Bill? So anyhow, over the years, I had a lot of time to think about it, and about 10 years ago, I decided, I'm tired of thinking about this. And I'm tired of waiting for Ron to be really a horse's ass about it, because he isn't being. So I'm going to have to do something. And I contacted the National Council of the Boy Scouts, because they were the ones who had the name on my award. And I told them the whole story. And I said, look, at that time, it'd been like 50 years. I said, half a century's gone by, and we need to correct this thing. And it's a team thing. You taught us in Boy Scouts that we act as a team, that we helped each other. We had our own roles to learn when we're, in a situation like this. And it's not right that only one member of the team would get recognition for this. And they waited about 6 weeks, and I thought they were maybe deliberating, but they got back to me and they said, well, we agree with everything you said, and good points there, but unfortunately there is a window, and unless the comments are made within this window, we can't do anything about it. And the window is 6 months. So in other words, by the time I got my reward, the window had already closed.
Yeah.
So I waited. I wrote them a letter back and told them I thought that was not right. And they replied that that's the way it was. So about 2 months before I retired last year, I decided to try it again. Maybe they have new leadership. And frankly, we all know the Boy Scouts have come through some very tough times. They have had some scandals. They had to change their name, their brand name, to not Boy Scouts of America, but Scouting. And I thought to myself, this might be a good time to go back to them with this, trying to make a new atmosphere, trying to create a new image or enhance their image. And what a great story it would be for the Boy Scouts to say, we're back to our roots. We're back to our original be prepared, teamwork, this kind of thing. So I went back and wrote a letter again. And about a month later, I get a reply, and it says, well, we can't do anything for you. It's we had that window, and we found your previous correspondence, and hey, it's really nice, and we agree with everything you said, but there's nothing we can do. But you might want to try and contact your local chapter. In this case, the Fayette Westmoreland Council of the Boy Scouts, and they're headquartered in Greensburg. Well, I was pretty upset by this time, because I wasn't getting the response I wanted. And when we don't get the response we want, human beings tend to be a little spicy about it. So I called up the Greensburg office, and I had both barrels loaded, and I was ready to do everything I could to either become a person nobody wanted to deal with anymore, or a person that would get something done. And I got a wonderful person, a lady by the name of Kirsten Eagle. Really, her name is Eagle, and she works in the Scouts. And I told her the whole story. She said, write me an email. I wrote her an email. And about a week later, this would be December or January, December last year, January this year, she sent me an email, and she said, where do I send the certificate?
Wow.
I said, what? She said, where do I send the certificate, the award for Mr. Goron?
Wow.
Then my first thought was, she got the wrong award, because the award that I wanted was the same one I got, and I don't know what she's got. So I said, what's your award say? And she told me, and it was exactly the same award. Well, now I'm starting to think, do I even ask her how she got it? Because I don't want to know, maybe. Sometimes in life you don't ask too many questions if you get the right answer the first time. So I said, well, let me give you my address. And I gave her my address, and a week went by and I didn't get anything. Another week went by and I didn't get anything. And I thought, this ain't right. There's something wrong here. Well, third week, I get a call from her, and she says, I'm sorry this has taken so long, but I need to get 2 signatures. I said, okay. 3 days later, I get it in the mail. It's the, paper, a mailer, the 8.5 by 11 certificate. And I get it out. I look, and the ink's dry, and their certificates are signed, and it's the same thing. Well, I thought it needed a citation. So I had already told her what the citation ought to say, and she said she was okay with that. So I went ahead and wrote up the citation, and then we went ahead and framed it. got it all set up the way I wanted it to be. And then it became, I mean, I got to tell you, Mary and guys, at that moment, I felt weightless. Now, I'm not weightless, but I felt weightless. I mean, it was like the cloud had been lifted. It was like, this is wonderful. Now the only thing I had to do was keep it a secret from Ron. And in order to do that, I'm in Columbus, Ohio. He's back home in Connellsville. You're
Right.
down there in, North or South Carolina?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay. I couldn't get a hold of you, but frankly, Bill, no, nothing personal, but I didn't need you.
Right, I did my part. You
did your
You
part
did your
great.
part.
years ago.
Yes, you did.
Absolutely. Without
Actually-
you, we wouldn't even be
Well,
here,
let's see here.
and vice
Actually,
versa.
I called Ernie Shear to get his number.
Yeah.
Well,
We were
Well,
looking-
after I got all that done, then I had to start working to get this recognition because I wanted Ron to get the same recognition I got. I didn't want it to be where I just put another stamp on the envelope I got and sent it on to Ron and said, okay, here's your award, Ron. Because that wasn't the way it was done for me. I
You
didn't
just
want that.
wanted to get me teared up, didn't you?
That's
I
right.
did.
Talk
I
about
I
that.
didn't know that was going to happen that way, but I understand it completely because I couldn't. If you were listening to me in church that day, I hardly got through the thing myself. I mean, I started to get choked up just reading your citation. But anyhow,
yeah.
we went ahead and I got a hold of Nick Jacobs. Nick was invaluable in giving me the names of the people that I needed to contact. And Mary, of course, was one of the people. And then there was the Daily Courier contact, and he had contacts with the Herald Standard. And they each took an interest in it from a human interest standpoint about the story. And then we had 3 different photographers there, counting Mary, at the service. And I spoke to and Marcia Ghost got involved in it and got a hold of your sister, who got a hold of your wife, who got a hold of me. And my wife kept saying to me, I can't believe that Ron doesn't know about this yet. I can't believe. And I said, well, look, it's not going to be a big deal. It's having the St. Rita's Festival over the weekend. And so I imagine most people will be at the festival and there won't be many. I'll be surprised if there's 25 people in church. Well, my God, there was a whole bunch of people in church. And I couldn't believe it when I stood up there at the pulpit and looked out there at all those people. And I thought, holy mackerel. And then, of course, that day, ironically, or maybe this is God's will, who's sitting in the front row but Dr. Bill Colvin's son and wife? It was their 50th wedding anniversary.
Gee.
I know, Bill. It was unbelievable.
Yes. So you and Richard, it was your goal. You wanted to have this happen by the time you had your birthday, and your birthday was July 13th. Is that right?
It was, but I wanted to have this happen before I checked out of planet Earth.
That's right. Okay, very good. It happened on your birthday, and it happened at Immaculate Conception Church in Connellsville. So Father Paul Lissick had to be involved in this whole piece of thing happeing.
And the Knights of Columbus and the Holy Name Society. I mean, they were all involved in this.
Yes, and so we knew that all that I recall knowing about this was that Ron, do you always sit in the front row at 6 o'clock mass?
Well, I can't get up and down as like I used to.
Well, it really came in handy.
Yeah, well, Father came up to me and says, "Don't you fall asleep." I'm like, "What?" And then I seen this guy walking up to the podium, and he says, "I'm Richard Dunston." I didn't recognize you from the back, Rich. If you'd have come at me forward, I'd have recognized you.
Ron, I didn't recognize you from the front. I mean, you didn't have a beard and all that when I knew you.
Yeah.
Well, I put on my Raquin-based submarine vest. So I figured everybody knows.
There you go. What an evening it was. What a mess.
Oh, wow.
So Ron, when Richard was up there and he started to speak, and he said, "I stand before you to honor a friend and fellow Boy Scout." And then when he said your name, you were taking it all in, and you did get emotional. What was going through your mind?
I started crying.
Yeah.
What was going through my mind? It says, "Oh no, this can't be for that award."
Yeah.
I didn't think it was for what it was. I said,
Right.
but it has to be. Richard is,
Right.
is there with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I teared up pretty good the whole way through Mass.
Yeah.
And I thank God for everybody that has been in my life.
Well, it was a long time coming, 60 years. 60 years.
Yep.
So Bill, let me ask you a question. Did the experience change you in any way?
Not right then, but as life goes on, it changed me a lot. I realized I could have gone out of here at 16 years old. I'm getting ready to turn 77, and without those two, it wouldn't have happened.
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
That's right. So tell me about a little bit about your life in these 60 years, about your family, just a little bit about how you got to live these 60 years.
I've had a good time, no regrets, none whatsoever. I wouldn't change anything. Like I said, I was married. I had 6 children, 10 grandchildren, and 4 great grandchildren, and love them all. They're spread out all over the country. I don't get to see them that much, but I enjoy it. My dad always told me, he said, you might not have to work, you might not like to work, but you're going to learn how to work. And he did teach me.
That's
And
right.
I've had a good life, very blessed life. I wouldn't
That's
change
wonderful.
no
And
regret.
so, Bill, did you have any siblings growing up on your farm?
Uh,
So you were it. So did you had to work hard on your farm? Did you have to
oh
do a
yeah,
lot of jobs? Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
Got up
Yeah.
4 o'clock in the morning, milk cows and feed up, and then go to school and try to keep my eyes open. And
Yeah. Yeah.
back after school and do the same thing in the evening, 7 days a week. And I
Wow.
loved it. I hated to give up the dairy farm. I did. I loved it, but
That's right.
it just weren't meant to be.
That's right. Well, you worked hard, and that work ethic has sure stayed for sure. So Bill, what does it feel like being reunited with Ron and Richard after all these years?
Great. I'm glad we could do that. And Richard, I'm glad what you did for Ron. You reached out, and that's that type of man I remember as a boy. That's who you are. And
Yeah.
you are our scout leader, and that's why you are a scout in our troop, Fox troop.
That's wonderful. And that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us. What an honor this is to have
I
you all
want to thank
together.
Richard for his thing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you guys. Boy, this is
I
just
don't think I thanked him. I think I was busy crying when he was giving me.
well, Ron, you said the thing that was the most important to me in the whole thing. You said we just did our job, Rich, and that's exactly right. We
Yep.
just did our job. We got praise for it. I did. Now you have. Bill played his part perfectly. Maybe turned a little bluer than I would have hoped, but he did a great job. And if it hadn't been for this whole day happening that December, we would have a little bit less grace in our life, I think.
Exactly.
Very true. Very true. And Bill appreciating every day, right?
Oh,
I
yes.
remember when I came out of the Navy, I went up to see Bill and Claudia and all their kids.
Yeah.
Good. That's awesome. Oh, well, I'm so glad that you were able to be back together once again and to share this very inspiring story. And you're forever bonded. And now that we're
good
listening
friends.
we're all part of it now too. So thank you for sharing that. For Richard, the recognition of Ron's life-saving effort was about making amends. It may have been out of his control to do it then, but he found that it's never too late to right a wrong. For Ron, it was about learning to stay calm and focused and on doing the right thing. And for Bill, it's about the life he got to live. 3 friends, although separated by distance, forever bonded by that fateful day. May their story inspire you to recognize someone who is overlooked with kind words, to do the right thing, and to appreciate every day you are blessed to live. Thanks so much for being with us.